Now, our next item of business today is consideration of business motion 23898 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out revision to today's business and a suspension of standing orders. Could I call on Graham Day to move this motion?
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. No member has indicated they wish to speak on the motion. The question, therefore, is that motion 23898 be agreed. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. We're going to turn now to topical questions. Our first topical question is from Stuart Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And with your indulgence, thank you to my constituent who's just given us time. To government, what discussions it has had with the UK government regarding compensation for fishing communities in the light of disruption of ports since the end of the EU exit transition period.
Thank you. Cabinet Secretary Fergus Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. No substantive discussion on a compensation scheme for Scottish fishing communities took place, and it's simply unacceptable for the UK Government to launch such a scheme without consulting the Scottish Government. The deal reached with the EU demonstrated the UK Government's profound lack of knowledge of or concern for Scottish seafood interests. Industry will rightly be concerned that the compensation scheme will be delivered in the same vein. This government will, however, continue to stand up for Scottish fishing and will do everything we can to ensure the compensation scheme reflects the real and lasting damage done to the Scottish seafood sector.
Stuart Stevenson.
Right now, shellfish exports are being spoilt beyond usefulness because barriers exist where there were none a month ago. When does the Cabinet Secretary or his colleagues expect to have an interaction with the UK Government about proper compensation funds from that body that will keep the many small businesses, which are a vital part of distant coastal communities, afloat?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I have on several occasions representing the Scottish Government on the XO Committee made it clear that the UK Government, having wanted Brexit and having delivered Brexit in a cack-handed way, ignoring the advice of the Scottish Government and of industry for a grace period, are now responsible and solely responsible for the losses that have arisen as a result of their failings. I have made clear that compensation is required. I did so early last week at the XO meeting, and I then repeated that call on other XO meetings, attendances on behalf of the Scottish Government. To date, the UK Government hasn't given the Scottish Government any details whatsoever of the package. The Prime Minister made an apparently off-the-cuff remark yesterday indicating that the package for the whole of the UK may be as little as £23 million. To put that in perspective, last year the Scottish Government delivered compensation to the Scottish sector alone for COVID compensation and support of £23.5 million. But I do expect that the UK Government will need to start communicating with us on this matter, and indeed I've called upon them so to do.
Stuart Stevenson.
Today in Peterhead Market, there were a few hundred boxes of fish in a market built to process 10,000 each day. Given that the quotas available for the next 6 years see no meaningful expansion of catching opportunities, indeed bring some critical reductions, due in no small part to Westminster incompetence and deliberately chosen trade-offs, what options exist to remedy this for fishermen in the North East and right across Scotland, and indeed, for that matter, across the UK?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the reduced prices and indeed the reduced fish available at the market are again direct results of the Brexit Búrach, sadly. However, I want to stress, Presiding Officer, that my imperative, my number one priority, is to make sure that we in Scotland, working with local authorities, with Food Standards Scotland, working with DFDS and other hubs, is to resolve these difficulties insofar as it is within our power. And I've had detailed discussions, obviously, with the stakeholders, the leading stakeholders in the fishing sector across the whole of Scotland, and will continue to do so. But it's very difficult for me to see that these problems could accurately be described as teething problems, the phrase used by UK ministers. I fear that they're more serious and deep-seated than that. And indeed that there are so many of them, 57 varieties, I told the EXO committee last week, that it does seem to me that the UK should seek a derogation from the EU of these requirements. And probably the only reason it doesn't do so is that because it has forfeited goodwill with the EU, that request may be rejected.
And I've got two supplementaries. Jamie Halker-Johnson to be followed by Beatrice Wishart.
Presiding Officer, the UK Government has taken responsibility for their share of the problem the sector has faced over the last few weeks, and they've stepped up with a £23 million compensation fund. It's also clear that the Scottish Government weren't prepared for the end of the transition period. So can the Cabinet Secretary now unequivocally state whether the delays caused by Food Standards Scotland, an agency he is responsible for, have now been sorted out?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'm sorry that the Scottish Conservative representative makes these very serious allegations. Mr. Halker-Johnson has not provided me with a shred of evidence to back them up. I think it's quite astonishing that a representative in this Parliament should make such allegations without checking his facts. The facts are that the Scottish Government's been working flat out in the period in the run-up to Brexit and for years before, and has joined the industry in asking for a derogation period, because the problems arise here not through the lack of sufficiency of staff from FSS or local authorities. The problems arise because the UK Government decided, against advice from me, from industry in Scotland and elsewhere, to seek the necessary period of time within which to try a wholly untested system to make sure that difficulties arising therefrom and the huge complexities involved and the plethora of public bodies involved could successfully work together to navigate them. I find it's extraordinary that the Scottish Tories don't accept responsibility for the Brexit bourach that they have created. And indeed, not one of them has yet had the guts to admit that this deal is a bad deal for Scottish fishing.
Beatrice Wishart.
Officer, the fishing industry has been used as a political football, and there's anger in the Shetland fleet. It's just a month since I was told by Michael Gove that government would, quote, ensure that in Kent we do not have the type of traffic disruption that some have feared, unquote. And yet that's precisely what's happened. My colleague Alistair Carmichael led an urgent debate on this at Westminster last week. It's time politicians in all parties and governments work together to find a solution. Will the Cabinet Secretary push for real focus across governments so that this short-term disruption doesn't turn into a long-term loss for parts of our fishing industry?
Cabinet Secretary.
I can assure the member that over the last 5 years, and in particularly the last 2 years, I have worked together with Scottish Government officials tirelessly to impress upon UK colleagues just how important it was to be prepared for the disruption that Brexit would cause. 150,000 estimated certificates EHCs required. We worked tirelessly and ceaselessly to prepare, and now we are doing the same to resolve the difficulties. As I've already made clear, the first priority is to get things started. But the sad thing is, Presiding Officer, that because we are not an independent country in full control of all of these matters, we are dependent upon the HMRC, upon the UK Customs that don't recognise types of Scottish fish at all to do the job for us. And sadly, they have been found wanting. And it's only because of the pressure that we have led over the past week that the Prime Minister has been shamed into making off-the-cuff remarks under pressure from the Scottish Government to make payments of compensation that frankly could have been avoided if they had done their job properly in the first place.
Thank you very much. Question number 2, Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Very much, Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government when the opening of the Royal Hospital for Children and Young People will be completed.
Cabinet Secretary Jean Freeman.
In May last year, I informed Parliament that work on the hospital was expected to be completed by 25th of January 2021, but I did at that time highlight how COVID-19 may adversely affect the timeline. As a result of a key engineering team needing to self-isolate for 2 weeks and other COVID-related amendments to working practices, the completion date of the hospital has been delayed by 2 weeks until the 8th of February this year. It is important to recognise that a number of services transferred safely to the new site in May, including outpatient services at the Department of Clinical Neurosciences, Neurophysiology and Diagnostic Radiology. In mid-July, we moved neurosurgery along with neurosurgery theatres and interventional neuroradiology. And finally, in respect of children's services, neurology and orthopaedics transferred over the summer, while children and adolescent mental health services transferred earlier this month.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
I'm very grateful to the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. The hospital has been at Sheens Road since 1895. Staff are very fond of it, but they'll be looking forward to the benefits of 21st century facilities. The latest construction hold-up announced on Friday won't be much of a surprise to those who've been waiting years already. There's a lot for the public inquiry to get to the bottom of, and an FOI from the Liberal Democrats last week revealed that we've already paid £28 million in repayments for the building. But I'm hopeful that the end of this building saga is now in sight, so we can get on with treating people in a better setting. It can be tough transferring services in winter at the best of times. So how is the Government and Health Board going to ensure that this happens smoothly at these worst of times? What is the time frame for the transfer of each remaining department and service? And the Cabinet Secretary has told me 2,000 snagging issues previously identified have been resolved. But what expectation is there of any further snagging?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the transfer of services will be made, the final transfer of services will be made exactly as all the others have been up until now, and that is in direct consultation with the clinical teams involved and in a timescale and in a manner that they are content with. This has been a feature throughout this, that they are content with in terms of patient safety and the management of all the other demands on their time. Remember that just earlier this month, further set of services were transferred. In terms of that completion date of the 8th of February, that then allows a 6-week notice period for service migration. So we would expect that to be around the 22nd, 23rd of March, depending on the hospital and the services being able to manage all the other demands on their time and the clinical teams being content. The remaining services, outpatient services that remain at Sheens, are cardiology, haematology, complex respiratory, including cystic fibrosis, plastic dressings clinic, and of course, emergency. So the additional cost, if you like, the payments that have been made by NHS Lothian for the new hospital, which they were obliged to do, having taken ownership of it and meeting that contractual obligation, our payment for services now for a site that is considerably occupied will be complete in its occupation around about the 22nd, 23rd or thereabouts in March, where the final services will transfer over into a safe, effective and highly valued site, offering the best of new design and new technologies for the children of Lothian.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Again, Presiding Officer, I'm grateful for that reply. So can we take it from that answer that the 23rd of March or thereabouts will be the very last date on which there will cease to be patients at the old Sheens building? Can I also ask, we've seen that there are terrible twists in the story of this pandemic. So has the government explored retaining the old building until this pandemic is over, in case there is another twist in that story and we need greater hospital capacity? Infection control perspective, extra space is potentially really valuable. So have any discussions taken place with the site developers who might understandably be eager to get to work?
Secretary.
So I think there was about 6 questions in there, and if Mr Cole-Hamilton would like to write to me, then I'd be happy to answer each of them in detail. Suffice it to say that throughout this period and the period up until that final transfer in March, and I have put a very deliberate caveat on that because, of course, clinical teams need to be content that that is the right and safe time and proper time to do it, bearing in mind what they are currently experiencing and responding to admirably in terms of the current pandemic. So let's be clear about the caveat. But in terms of how that transfer will take place and what will happen to the existing site, NHS Lothian and the Scottish Government will continue to be in discussion with the clinical teams, with the leadership of the existing hospital moving to the new hospital and with the planned purchasers of the site at Sheens in order to make sure that we have maximum flexibility without unnecessary additional cost in order to make sure that we can finally complete the transfer to a site that is now safe.
And Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask, what impact has the delay had on other NHS Lothian infrastructure projects? Ministers have recently told NHS Lothian that they will not provide the money for the replacement Princess Alexandra Eye Pavilion, for example. So can the Health Secretary guarantee that future investment projects in NHS Lothian will not pay the price for the delays and mismanagement of the new Sick Kids Hospital?
Cabinet Secretary.
So indeed, I think later on this afternoon, Mr Briggs and I are having a conversation about precisely that position in the Eye Pavilion. There has been no impact on other infrastructure projects. As I made clear at the time when I halted the move, the additional cost of making good and making safe the new site would be cost borne by the Scottish Government. And that is the case. So there is no direct impact on other areas of infrastructure in NHS Lothian or indeed elsewhere. And you and I, Mr Briggs, will discuss this afternoon how we can ensure that modern services are available and improved for citizens in Lothians in terms of ophthalmology and other related matters.